What's up, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the QB Factory Reboot brought to you by SB Nation and Bleeding Green Nation. Today is Tuesday, March 22nd, and the quarterback carousel continues. We're going to get into everything that has went down since we last talked to you guys. We have Matt Ryan to the Colts. We have Deshaun Watson traded to the Cleveland Browns. Kenny Pickett has his pro day on Monday, and we have a couple more pro days to go down this week. So we have a little bit to discuss, but before we get into any of that, I am your host, Raichele Privette. I am joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, the one and only Mark Schofield. And also, we have another special guest. You guys know that we love bringing special guests on the show. And on today's episode, we are joined by senior NFL reporter for the Draft Network. She was also formerly with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their staff writer. Her name is Carmen Vitali. So, yeah, we're so excited to have you, Carmen. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Mark, Carmen, how's it going? How are you both doing?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to be here. It's great to have Carmen here, and I'm excited for the show. I'm excited to dive in. We got a ton to talk about, like you said, Raichele, with the quarterback carousel. So, without further ado, Carmen, I did want to ask you this: the move from covering the Bucks to the Draft Network. A, how is it going over there? And B, are Joe and Kyle treating you okay over there? Because as I told you in Indy, I have no problems like smacking them around if I have to, if they give me any grief.
No, gosh, they have been so wonderful to me. I can't say enough about both of them and how knowledgeable they are. I got yelled at actually by Kyle because I was like, "You guys make me feel so dumb," and he's like, "You're not dumb." So he's doing the exact opposite of giving me any sort of flack. But yeah, no, the move was very like I wanted to move into NFL coverage. I wanted to cover the entire league. The Draft Network gave me the opportunity to do that, and I'm also going to be now acting as their managing editor as well. That was just
go.
Yeah, I just started that this week, so I literally like got off of a training session just to come on like right here. So that was a kind of a back-to-back thing. I am trying to tread water as best as I possibly can, but there's so much news, like starting at the combine and then moving right into free agency from being so hyper focused on one team, and now it's like the whole league is opened up, and it's so much stuff. My screen time was not a fun little notification to get the other day.
Yeah, that notification's never any good. Carmen, let's talk about sort of the quarterback carousel because, as Raichele teed up, we've had so many moves the past couple of days, past week actually. What stood out to you from the quarterback movement so far?
Well, I said this as soon as Atlanta entered the race for Deshaun Watson. My whole thing was like, how do you feel if you're Matt Ryan? Like, you've given everything you can to this franchise. You have done everything asked. You haven't been surrounded by a great team, especially these last few years. And when you have been, you've had success. So what else do you want from a quarterback? I thought that was really surprising. I didn't think that the Falcons really had any serious interest in Deshaun. I forgot who it was that brought up, I think it was Jeff Schwartz that brought up like maybe that the Falcons were just trying to drive up the price for both the Saints and the Panthers when it came to Deshaun Watson. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought. Maybe they are trying to do that, because why in the world would they want him? And then when it was, that was like that whole cycle was just the most like weird thing to me. And then for him to say that Cleveland's out of it and it's down to like the NFC South, and then all of a sudden go back to, I don't know, the whole thing was just crazy. But I kind of, not that I was inclined to feel for Matt Ryan in any way, being a part of the Bucs for so long, but like I kind of felt for Matt Ryan.
I wanted to touch on Matt Ryan a little bit more. So the fact that he's going to the Colts, right? And they've had a lot of different quarterbacks over these last, 7 years? That's crazy. How do you think he's going to have an impact on the team in his first season there?
I mean, he's a pro, and we saw this when Phillip Rivers joined the Colts. You know, you kind of instantly upgrade that side of the ball. He's got a really good running game to lean on in Indianapolis and Jonathan Taylor. I think it's a really good setup for him. I think that it's probably a better setup than the Falcons. I know it's a better setup than the Falcons. So, like, I think he's coming out as a winner on top of all this. My whole thing was just like, I didn't understand why the Falcons wanted to get rid of him. But no, I think that he's going to have all the tools that he needs. I think they could use some more receiving weapons and stuff like that, because he's been so used to being in such a pass-heavy offense. That's going to be different for him, but he is getting older, and I think that once he realizes that he can lean a little bit more on the run game, or these checkdowns to Jonathan Taylor, who can get yards after the catch, I think that he's going to really like it.
Two quarterbacks we haven't seen any news on yet. They're sort of waiting in the wings. Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Mayfield obviously needs a new home because of the Watson trade. Garoppolo with Trey Lance waiting in the wings. Carmen, where do you think those two guys land? Do you think you are going to get news on that front anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you kind of have to. I don't know, like the drama surrounding Baker Mayfield. I mean, I was like, these guys are competitors. They don't want to be told that they're second fiddle to anyone. Is Deshaun Watson an upgrade? I think that remains to be seen too, as far as, and like, this is a guy that hasn't played football in a year. And if I were Baker Mayfield, I would have felt some type of way about that too. But I think that you have to look at, I mean, like, Carolina was in the race for Matt Ryan. I don't think they're satisfied with Sam Darnold. I wouldn't be. You think about that, and then like now you've got an opening in Atlanta. Is Josh Rosen going to be there? Apparently, we've heard the rumors about Marcus Mariota going to the Falcons, which I think is interesting too. The musical chairs of like mediocre quarterbacks just never ceases to amaze me in the NFL. So yeah, I don't like. I have to think that all of that is going to be done relatively soon, especially as these pro days get ramped up with college quarterbacks. I know we had Kenny Pickett, the other day and yesterday, I believe it was. And so you're see more of these guys and maybe learn a little bit more, but I don't know that I think this quarterback class leaves a lot to be desired, as far as guys coming into the league.
What are your thoughts overall of this quarterback class?
Yeah. I think again, it leaves a little bit to be desired. I think that just given the nature of the position, you're going to get multiple quarterbacks that are still going to go in the first round. But I don't know if they're necessarily first round quarterbacks. And I don't know that they've been graded as such. I know a lot of our guys at TDN have said as much. And like, these guys aren't necessarily graded out as first round quarterbacks, but they're going to go in the first round because of the fact that there are still so many quarterback needy teams. You want to get somebody in even as a backup. Although I think if you're taking a first round quarterback, you want those guys to start. But I don't know that there's nobody like in this class that I'm like, all right, I'm super excited about. I know Malik Willis is climbing up some boards. People are getting a little bit excited about him, especially with where the league is going. These offenses are going, these dual threat quarterbacks. But I still think that, he's got a lot of stuff to clean up, and his transition to, especially coming from Liberty, is going to be a tough one for him. It's not going to be seamless.
Yeah, Carmen, I wanted to ask you about Willis because we're recording this on Tuesday, his pro days today. There's been some buzz that not only is he climbing, like you said, about Detroit too. Now, I mean, I share your thoughts. We both share your thoughts on the sort of reservations about this class. But do you think it's possible that he comes off the board that early? Do you think we're still going to see him sort of slide a bit?
I mean, it also depends on like the kind of I like Detroit. I just don't like, because I don't think that they're set up to have a quarterback like Malik Willis come in. And like, if you're spending that much capital on a guy, I don't see it. But like, I mean, stranger things have happened, right? And again, given this position, the quarterback position, you just never know. And I'm sure that there's room for like a shocking pick, and it could be, I mean, I'm not gonna also put that past the Lions at the same time, but I don't think that their offense is really well set up for a guy like Malik. But I do think that he's probably, now kind of solidified himself as QB1 in this class, especially because we haven't seen a lot from Matt Corral. Kenny Pickett, he's got the processing power, but I don't think his ceiling is as high as Malik Willis. Maybe his floor is higher. But I don't see it in Detroit. I really don't.
Where do you think is a good landing spot for him, Willis, if it's not Detroit? Like, where would you like to see him?
Oh, that's a great question. Again, I'm so underwhelmed by these guys. I'm like, I don't really know where to put you.
Was that for you, Carmen? Not going to have to sort of change gears here, but was that sort of your theme from coming out of the combine? Was that this league just does not like this quarterback class?
No, exactly. I don't think that. I think that's I think that's the case. I just don't. And I think you see it with this quarterback carousel that's going on with, again, all these mediocre level quarterbacks. Like, it's crazy to me that like some of these, and especially like you got guys like, I don't know, like Blake Marcus Mariota that are coming in and you're like, they're being talked about as if they're like this bona fide starter. And I'm like, what? But if you don't have any options in the draft, I mean, like that's the biggest tell or sign to me, essentially, is that these guys are fighting over quarterbacks that probably shouldn't be starting in this league either.
Right.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about Kenny Pickett. We know based off of yesterday, all of the headlines that went down about his hand size, and how it grew since the combine, which is crazy. What were your immediate thoughts when you saw that information go out?
So actually, it's really funny trying to explain, well, most things about the NFL to people that don't actually follow it. But the Kenny Pickett line or storyline in particular, I was explaining to my best friend and her husband, I was like, yeah, so he's been knocked because his hands are too small, even though that really hasn't affected anything that he's done as far as throwing the ball, keeping the ball like in weather, whatever. So he's been doing these stretches to try and stretch out his hands. So he measures like just the whole, if you like go like all the way back and you look at this from like a very like, I don't know, non-football fanatic standpoint, I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. It's the most ridiculous thing. So I think it's hysterical. Really, like, I don't know.
So with Willis and Pickett as sort of, I don't want to say consensus 1-2 because you ask 5 different people, you get 5 different answers who these top guys are. But putting those guys aside, who do you think might be the next quarterback off the board? Because I've seen a lot of love for Desmond Ridder. I've seen a lot of people talking about Matt Corral. I've seen some people say Carson Strachan if he's healthy. And then, of course, there's Sam Howell. So if Pickett and Willis are QBs 1 and 2, who's QB 3? And does that guy go in the first round or do you have to wait till night 2?
I mean, I think that there's been a lot of talk about Desmond Ridder and kind of sneaking into the first round, especially given, I think that first round designation or like low first round designation was like Matt Corral's to lose. And I think with just like the lack of sample size that you have with him now and the fact that he didn't throw at the combine, I wrote a whole thing where I'm like, this guy was up at the podium for 15 minutes talking and he had to sit down. I'm like, he's clearly not healthy. Like he's not healthy enough to do all this stuff yet. So you don't have, and if he was, I don't know why you wouldn't go against this quarterback class because you have an opportunity to showcase that you could be even QB1, and he hasn't done that. So I think that he's fallen off, and I think that Desmond Ridder, he's also on the rise. And I think that, at a program like Cincinnati, you're going against, maybe they're not the biggest school and it's not the biggest talent, but I mean, like, put him up against Kenny Pickett, who went to Pitt, and then Malik Willis, who went to Liberty. I mean, Cincinnati is a bigger program than all of those, and he was able to lead that program to a lot of success. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. And I think that that's also the consensus of our scouts over at the Draft Network. Like, you could see Desmond Ridder kind of sneak into the first round, especially, just given that there's such a lack of options.
We're called the QB Factory for a reason. And of course, one of the longstanding jokes with the Eagles is, they love their quarterbacks and are never like ruling them out. So we heard yesterday that the Eagles sent their quarterback coach, Brian Johnson, to attend Pitt's pro day. And I just wanted to ask you, out of all of these quarterbacks in this class, do you feel like one particularly fits best with the Eagles scheme?
I mean, I think that because of what Sirianni has done to kind of assimilate Jalen Hurts into this offense and all that, I think that it could be a landing place for Malik Willis. I think that they have similar skill sets as far as being that dual threat running quarterback, the guy that's really athletic, moving around in the backfield. But that being said, I don't think that any of these guys are an upgrade to Jalen Hurts. Like, I'll go ahead and say it. I think that, Jalen Hurts was just outside the top 10 in most passing stats last year, if not in the top 10. And I think for what you've adapted this scheme a little bit to him a little more. And I don't know. I was impressed with him every time the Bucs played him last year, or both times. I was like, listen, he's a good quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. And I think he's much better than a lot of these guys that are given starting designations elsewhere and being traded around. So I don't know that I see a clear upgrade for the Eagles.
Carmen, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you to be Howie Roseman for a second. You've just said, and I think you're absolutely right, nobody in this class is an upgrade from Hurts from day one. So now you've got picks at 15, 16, and 19. What does Carmen, the GM, do to improve the Eagles next year with those 3 picks?
Well, I will say that when I first started doing diving into all this mock draft stuff, after the season was over with the Bucs, I literally had to double and triple check that I'm like, oh my God, the Eagles have this many picks in the first round in this really short window of time. So it's like, yeah, the possibilities are endless. And actually, Jack McKessie on our site is about to do an article outlining his strategy. But if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm such a trench person. So I'm like, I think you need to fortify that defensive line. And I think that this defensive line class is a little bit top heavy. So I would go after a good defensive lineman. I would go after one of the Georgia defensive linemen. Yeah. I'm so impressed with just their entire defense. We've actually had this discussion, would you take Georgia's starting front seven in the national championship over units in the NFL? And the answer was yes. Yes, you would.
Absolutely.
This team is stacked. So I think you fortified there. I always think that, offensive linemen are always a good idea. But especially, maybe not put so much on Hurts to be able to escape and maybe give him a bit more solidified pocket, especially with, I know, some aging guys on the line. So I'm going to address the trenches first. I don't know with those picks, maybe go after a receiver. I like Chris Olave a lot. I think that he would be really good. But yeah, that's just who I am as a person. And even if I'm being Howie Roseman right now, I'm still going to go after the trench.
We also wanted to touch, you used to cover Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes. So when the news came out that Tom Brady was returning, one, did you already know? And also, what was your immediate response to that? Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised because I thought that it would be, I really thought that he was coming back. I didn't have anything necessarily to back that up as far as insider knowledge or anything. But at the combine, I talked to Jason Light and Bruce Arians. We all did. And they said, we're leaving the light on for him. And just the way that Tom went out, there was I fully expect him to retire a Patriot, sign the 1-day contract and retire a Patriot. And he didn't do that. And I was like, all right, and there was no plans to do that. There was no, whether or not he wants the fanfare, he's got a whole social media team. He's got Charlotte Wilder just did an awesome piece detailing his social squad and all of the people that he has around him. He owns a production company now. I'm like, this man is not going out and not having some sort of epic video, we all see his little hype videos and stuff. So I was never convinced that he was actually retiring. I do think that it was probably a real possibility, but I was not surprised when he came back. And I think every Bucs fan just breathed a huge sigh of relief because, again, of all this quarterback stuff we're talking about, what were they going to do?
Right.
Go ahead.
Do you think, Carmen, it was a bit of a spite on retirement because you had Lock-In Fora and Schefter come out and sort of scoop his retirement? And having covered Brady for years, I wouldn't put it past him to be like, oh, you think I'm done? No, I'm coming back. Or do you think he just looked around the NFC and figured, I can win another NFC championship? Look around. AFC is loaded, but look at the NFC right now.
I think that the NFC absolutely, and the NFC South especially, I think that definitely had a bearing on because seasons are really long and it's a lot of work. And I don't know that he was necessarily all on board with having to do that all over again. But I will say that if he was going to come back, it was going to be the Bucs. It was always going to be the Bucs. It was never going to be another team. He was never going to start over again. That wasn't going to happen. So yeah, I think he looked at that situation and was like, wow, yeah, the NFC, they kind of need me. And then also the added bonus of spite because he is the petty king and we love him for it.
We do.
But yeah, you're gonna scoop me like that. Okay. I was really surprised that Jeff Darlington was in on that because Jeff Darlington is really in on his camp and he's got a really great relationship with a lot of people around Brady. So I was like, did we want to do that? Because essentially I have to imagine you're burning some bridges when you do that and you're banking on him actually retiring. But now I wonder if he's still in the know, if he's still ready for the scoop.
Carmen, I wanted to circle back to the combine for a second. You mentioned Matt Corral at his podium session, which I was impressed with when he talked about the leadership Wednesdays and the team meetings and stuff like that. I wanted to ask you, of the quarterbacks you heard from with the combine, who stood out to you? Was it Matt Corral? Was it Carson Strong? Who stood out to you, the guys that you heard from?
Yeah, I also was very impressed with Matt Corral. I know I like glazed over it by just saying, oh, he had to sit down. But he as far as leadership quality goes and just maturity levels, Matt Corral was by far and away kind of the guy that I was most impressed with, especially because not only did he talk about those leadership Wednesdays, he talked a lot about mental health. He talked a lot about being vulnerable, and that's how he leads. And that, he can kind of rally a team around him in that way. That was really impressive to me. And then, Kenny Pickett is very polished, right? We talked about him having the high floor. He's very, very polished. He was very polished in his podium session. I think he got a little frustrated with all the hand talk, all of the questions about his hand. I would too. But yeah, I was very impressed with those two. And I wasn't at Desmond Ritter's podium, so I didn't get to see him speak. But as far as the quarterbacks go, I think Corral and Pickett, as far as podium sessions, I should say, yeah, they were very impressive.
I have a question about the loaded AFC. If there's a lot of young, talented, elite quarterbacks in that conference. So who would you say are your top 3 quarterbacks in the AFC?
God, that's so hard. I think I'm jumping on the Chargers bandwagon though. I freaking love Justin Herbert. I've never been able to profess my love for this kid because I was with the Bucs. So it was like, I can't be talking about another quarterback. I love Justin Herbert. There, I said it. I am so excited to see him grow because I just think what he's been able to do already at such a young age has been insane. And now he's got an incredible defense that's completely stacked with a coach that knows what to do with them.
Yep.
And I think he's going to be amazing. Otherwise, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, I don't know, it's got to be those 3, right? I also could be forgetting people because
Josh Allen.
There it is. Josh Allen. I also love Josh Allen.
Carmen, I didn't want Bills Mafia coming after you.
Don't come after me.
Back there.
I'm not used to paying attention. There's this much attention in the AFC. Okay, I'm there. I'm there now. God, yeah, I don't know. How are you supposed to pick a top 3?
It's so hard.
Then you've got Burrow, you've got Lamar.
God, Burrow. I love Joey too.
It's absolutely loaded.
It's so freaking loaded.
I really am just, I guess I was just thinking about the AFC West.
It's
as somebody that has to do a top 11 NFL quarterbacks in the next couple of weeks, I'm just gonna do a top 11 in the AFC because
well, honestly, you might as well, and then maybe sneak Tom in there. I don't know,
Tom and Aaron, and that's it, and maybe Stafford.
Maybe Matt Stafford. We're fighting now. I don't like Matt Stafford anymore. So
I get it. Carmen, as the managing editor now of TDN, we'll get you out of here on this. What do you all have coming up? I know you guys have the draft covered top to bottom, left to right, but give it. The microphone is yours. Plug some stuff. Plug the stuff you guys are doing over there. You guys are both doing over there.
Yeah, no, obviously this is draft season, so this is the bread and butter of what this company was founded on, but there is so much NFL coverage also coming your way. I mentioned earlier, Jack McKesney is going to have a plan for the Eagles, what they should do with their three first round picks. And there's a ton of stuff coming down the pipeline, not only for draft, but also for NFL. And then of course you got the big boards. Big boards are coming out soon. The updated big boards from Kyle and Joe and those guys that we love so much. And then, you've got a weekly mock draft that comes out from one of our scouts each week. And it's really, I'm learning so much from these guys. Like I said, I feel so dumb, but these guys have been evaluating these prospects since May. And I sit in these meetings every day of them cross-checking prospects constantly. So it's a really good dialogue, and all those guys, I can't say enough about them. So check them out.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We know that our listeners are going to love this episode, and all of our listeners, you can follow Carmen at Carmi V. So that's CarmieV. But thank you so much, Carmen, for taking the time. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was so fun.
Thanks, Carmen.
Any last words, Mark?
As always, go Eagles.
Go Eagles.
Go Birds.